Hey you guys, it's Friday and it's time for another movie retrospective. And on this one we're doing another double feature and we're finally getting around to doing probably some of the most classic sci-fi horror films ever made, Alien and Aliens.
Yeah, they're both masterpieces of what they are. You know, first one's kind of a horror movie in a sci-fi setting. The other one is an action movie in a sci-fi setting. But two are probably the most greatest flicks of all times, really.
Oh, definitely. You're not going to get any argument from me. Now, we also did Prometheus and Alien Covenant on one show.
Yeah.
Obviously, these are way better, than those, even though I like both of those movies. But these two were kind of like the gold standard. Are we even going to do an episode on 3 and 4?
No, really?
Probably not.
3 and 4 are almost like fan fiction.
Yeah.
Really, when you compare to these four films right here. Because to me, it's obvious that Alien 1 and 2, Prometheus and Covenant, are in the same series.
Yeah.
3 and 4 kind of seem kind of like fan fiction to me. 3 isn't terrible. It's actually, the tone is pretty good. 4 to me is almost kind of like a cartoon movie. There's a lot of cartoonish elements to it. It almost kind of like Soldier, really, with Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that. But you said that these two, I think that they are better than Alien and Covenant, than Prometheus and Covenant. But Prometheus and Covenant, visually, they hit high marks. I think they look great. The acting isn't bad. The storytelling isn't bad. It's just that a lot of it's missing. It was cut out. And I think it had a lot to do with the stuff that was happening with the studios.
Yeah.
They wanted the movies to be shorter, and they wanted it to be more like Alien, and it's hard to take Prometheus and Covenant and cut it down into a movie that kind of apes Alien 2. Because I think that's what the fans wanted.
Yeah.
That's not what Ridley Scott wanted, though. So, but still, I respect all four of the movies, really.
And they're all, obviously, like you said, 3 and 4 notwithstanding, those ones are, the 4 that we have talked about, that we're going to talk about today, that we talked about before, are obviously all in the same mythos, whereas, like, the other two were almost, like, offshoot. It's almost, I kind of consider them in the same vein as, like, the Alien versus Predator movies, which are, nominally in the same universe, but not really a continuation.
A lot of people dump on the AVP movies. I actually enjoyed them. I think they're fun to watch. I like them both. I like them both, even though Requiem is kind of dark. A lot of people complain that I think it's probably better dark because the special effects probably sucked, and if you saw them clearly, they wouldn't be any good. Better not to see it. Probably.
Yeah, sometimes that works in a movie's favor. Because especially if it's like a horror movie, it's like, I can barely see it. My imagination makes it way more scary.
I thought Requiem was fun. I think, but a lot of hardcore fans, especially younger guys in their 20s, they love to nitpick stuff, and I think they had their hopes set on a movie of a higher caliber, so I think they saw it as kind of like a wasted opportunity. Me, I just saw it as kind of like bonus fan fiction,
That's probably a good way of looking at it.
That's how I look at it. It's better than no movie at all.
Yeah.
But we're getting off the subject. Let's go ahead and get to Alien 1.
Yeah, let's talk about Alien 1, which came out in 1979.
Yeah, and I saw it with my dad in the theaters back when I was about 9, and I saw it at least twice. The movie was badass. It was kind of like 2001. It was like an homage to 2001, but it was a horror movie. And man, it stood head and shoulders above all the competition in those days. It really put you in there. It put you in that movie. You felt like you were really there. That's
really something, and this is what amazes me. Okay, the original script of Alien was written by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. Now, they have both said it's like we kind of stole from everything. We stole from Thing from Another World. They stole from like some B science fiction movies. Like if you've seen the Mystery Science Theater episode Night of the Blood Beast from 1958, and that also has an astronaut that comes back to Earth and he's been impregnated by an alien. There's like little alien shrimp something in his stomach. So it's like he got ideas from like a bunch of different places, and obviously from Star Wars and things like that. Now, at first, this was going to be a low-budget movie, like a low-budget sci-fi type of movie. But after the success of Star Wars and stuff, like bigger, studios started taking interest in sci-fi and, were willing to throw more money at it. So, so they got their script bought by a subsidiary of 20th Century Fox. And then there were 3 people from the subsidiary who wanted to go over the script and actually generally rewrote it. Now, Dan O'Bannon was not happy about that, but it should be noted that the three guys that did all the script rewrites and stuff that were from the whatchamacallit, they were the ones that came up with the whole subplot about Ash, the science officer. So that was all their idea, which was actually a very good addition to the movie, I thought, because it gave it a lot more suspense and shit like that. So
yeah, and a lot of mystery because, they give a backstory of like, hey, why'd this guy show up mysteriously before they put him on the crew before the mission started, They're already setting you up, Scott is telling you that finding this alien craft was no accident.
Yeah.
The company knew it was there.
Right. And the interesting thing, too, this was only... And actually, Ridley Scott was not the first director that was pegged to do this. Initially, he was not interested in doing it because he was just like, meh, but, Yeah. And actually, but when he ended up doing this was only his second movie, which is an amazing... I didn't even know that. He had made one movie before, The Duelists, in 1977.
I kind of remember that one.
Yes, this was only his second movie. Now, Sigourney Weaver... she was, I think this was really her first major role. She had only done Broadway previous to this. The cool thing about this movie, and Dan O'Bannon has said that when he wrote the original script, he's like, every single part was unisex. He didn't really care if they cast men or women in the roles. It didn't make any difference. So the casting director, once the movie was put into production, had a lot of leeway as to which, who we wanted to cast in whatever role. And the interesting thing about it is that pretty much all of the actors in this were much older than actors that would normally be in this type of movie, that would be in like a sci-fi or a horror type of movie. And I think that actually really helped. I mean, Sigourney Weaver was the youngest and she was 29. So, all the other ones, Harry Dean Stanton and, all of the other ones were much older.
They were all good actors, and I tell you, that cast, it made you really feel like these were real people, especially the way they were interacting with each other. You know what I mean? And a lot of that dialogue sounded like it was ad-libbed around the dining room table,
Yeah.
And fantastic characters. They really drew you into the story.
And I think that's probably, other than the amazing alien design, obviously, which you don't see a lot of in the first movie, because the first movie is very much, yes, it has sci-fi elements, but pretty much it's a straight up horror movie, like a suspense horror movie.
Yeah.
Other than the creature design, which of course was amazing and still looks amazing now, and I really don't think it's been topped. It hasn't even come close to being topped in all the years since. But I think my favorite thing about this is the characterization. The moment that you get put on this ship, the ship obviously looks like a ship that's been used, that's been lived in, and then you get these people waking up and they're just shooting the shit with one another, and it's like, you can tell these are just like working class folks, and they're just like, yeah, we're on our way back to Earth, towing the oar, and they're very relatable, they're very likable, and I really like how Ridley Scott established all their characters like immediately, and it seemed like so organic. And I think that was one thing that made this movie so much scarier, because you felt like you were there with them, because they just felt like normal, regular people just doing their job, and then all of a sudden these horrible things happen.
Especially in context with 1979, because the United States at that time was still kind of like an industrial superpower. And if you were there in that movie theater watching the movie, chances are you worked for a pretty big company. Maybe you worked, in some kind of mining company or an oil company or a building cars, building buildings. And, when my dad took me in 79, what I'm seeing on the screen is the same civilization I'm a part of as a kid. It's just that it's in space.
Yeah.
So the people in the audience who are watching this movie are very much like the people in the crew, And I can remember as a kid, just the reactions of the audience, the people that were with me. I can just remember how each one of those characters affected the audience. And each one of them kind of had their own role in the movie. Like Parker. A lot of guys remember Parker. Parker was the black guy who ran the mechanic stuff. That he was like the enlisted
he was like an engineer.
He's like an engineer down there. He wanted more money. And, he thought the executives were kind of cheating him out of a whole share. He didn't agree to a half a share. He agreed to a half a share, but he had no choice but to agree to a half a share. Well, that particular character really was kind of like the audience's umbilical cord into this movie, because he was working class in the same way that the audience tended to be kind of working class. And I really liked that character. I remember how much the audience responded to Parker.
Yeah.
Parker was kind of like the everyman in this story. And he has a lot of victories and a lot of triumphs, and he goes down fighting.
The great thing about Parker as a character is that, you know, he's funny and relatable from the beginning, but he's like, hey, I'm just doing a job, I don't get paid enough for this shit, you know, when they have to go check out the distress signal because it's in their contract and blah, blah, and he's like, I'm not paid enough to do this crap and stuff. But then as the movie goes on and the shit starts hitting the fan, he really steps up and, saves people's lives and things like that. So,
a lot of average people feel that the executive level kind of, or that they don't really deserve the positions that they're in, that there isn't a really, other than some paperwork and maybe going to the right schools, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're more competent than you are.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, one of the executives gets up from his chair when Parker sits in it. He brushes it off before he sits down. Kind of like they're dirty, you know. It's funny, it's funny, and people could relate to it. It's good.
Yeah.
And he's actually making the right calls a lot of times, you know, like, hey, why don't you freeze him? Why don't they freeze him? Well, there's ulterior motives. That's why they don't freeze him. But, he's making the logical call that the average man would, who's in the audience, what they would be thinking, freeze him, And
I mean, really, Parker's character and Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, are really the only two characters that are doing things the way they're supposed to be done, or like following protocol. I mean, he's like, hey, she was the one that when John Hurt's character, Kane, gets brought back with the fucking face hugger, and she's like, you guys can't come in here. It's like you're going to infect the whole ship. Yet, yes, I like you guys, but, I don't want all of us to get killed. And then even the captain, Dallas, like, overrides her.
Right.
But, her and Parker are pretty much the only ones that are going by the book. Everybody else... as sympathetic as all of the characters, I mean, the only unsympathetic character really is Ash, and you find out why later on.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that happened, you remember, Dallas kind of turned on Ripley. Hey, you almost let us out there, and she goes, the quarantine.
Right.
And Parker goes, well, hey, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something to that, So Parker was one of the only guys, only person of the crew that backed Ripley up.
Yeah, because she was right.
Yeah. Now he also he does a lot of cool stuff. He actually saves Ripley's life, saves her from the robot. Yeah. He defeats the robot, and then he goes down fighting the alien itself to defend. What was her name? It goes down Lambert. That's what her name was. He goes down defending Lambert. Now Parker, in many ways, is kind of like a parallel with Hicks. They're very much kind of like the same character in a way. They're both everymans that kind of pull you into the story. They both have their own triumphs, and then they both fall. Usually they die trying to save a woman, which is kind of I guess you could say it's a trope, but they're good characters. I kind of see Parker as the prototype for Hicks.
Yeah. The cool thing about this, and that it relates a little bit to what you're just saying, but the interesting thing, and I'm not the only person that's noticed this, obviously. Every critic has noticed this. Everyone that's talked about Alien and Aliens has noticed that the alien itself and the life cycle of the alien, which I should say, that creature design by H.R. Giger, or Geiger, I've heard it pronounced both ways, has never been topped, as I said. They wanted that particular look because of its sexual connotations, because its head is very phallic and various other things. And Dan O'Bannon has specifically said when he wrote the screenplay, he's like, I wanted to kind of subvert the regular horror movie sci-fi trope of like women being penetrated or victimized by men, by being stabbed or by being raped or whatever. He's like, by doing it to a man, because I thought that would make everyone very uncomfortable. He's like, so I had these very vaginal or very and very phallic looking aliens that were like, getting onto a dude's face and like putting things inside his body and then having them bust out. And he's like, and I definitely wanted to make, he's like, everyone had seen it done to women over and over, but he's like, I thought it would be much more upsetting to see that done to a man, where he was his bodily violation and all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because they come up with these crazy ideas, but the audiences don't see them. I mean, I was 9 at the time, and I was with my dad watching these movies, and I don't recall anybody from the time ever having any kind of sexual connotation with this movie. You know what I mean? They just saw it as aliens, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Aliens laying eggs into you and stuff, like a parasite.
Yeah. That was something that they want, and that's kind of why they liked H.R. Giger's creature design, because his work is very very sexual, very biomechanical, and all his creatures are very phallic or very vaginal. Lovecraftian, really. Yeah. And actually, the first Alien movie has been called the greatest Lovecraft adaptation that actually wasn't based on a Lovecraft story, because it is very visually, it does look very Lovecraftian.
I can see where they're coming from, but I remember the people of the time, I think that was kind of escaped them. I think that was a little, they weren't thinking along those lines. They just saw it as a monster movie.
Critics were, but yeah.
Critics did, but the time was different back then. There was no internet. People went to go see movies, and then they didn't read reviews, and then most of them didn't read any magazines about it afterwards. There wasn't like a fanfic aftermarket really in those days, other than maybe Fangoria magazine and things. People just saw movies and took them for what they were and read into them, what they thought. And I remember, being 9, seeing this happen. To me, it was just aliens. Alien monsters that laid eggs into you, kind of like the way a wasp would put an egg into a...
That's what they based it on, yeah.
Okay, into a tarantula.
Human wasp.
Yeah, and things that you saw bugs do, Yeah. So it really didn't stand out to me in 79 as being anything sexual. But like I said, I was only 9.
Yeah.
But the thing is not being 9 years old in 1979, you were exposed to sex.
Yeah.
I mean, it was everywhere, People think that the good old days were super puritanical. No, not at all. The 70s was wild. I was in California at the time. You know what I mean? It was nothing to go to the beach or go to the mountains and see teenage girls walk around absolutely naked. Yeah. Because there was nudism and stuff going on.
Yeah.
So it was just and the California hot tub culture and shit. We even as a kid you knew what was going on.
Yeah,
you knew what they were doing.
Yeah, the 70s were just
70s were wild.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it really was if you weren't there. I mean, I was just a kid, but I do remember a lot.
And I was in the heart of it, Long Beach, California.
But so like another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit with the first Alien before we move on to the second one is that we have the Blu-ray, which has the theatrical cut, and it also has the director's cut. Yeah. Now, the director's cut I actually like a bit better, even though not a shit ton has been added to it. The two major things that have been added are 2 scenes, both of which I really like. Now, if you saw the theatrical version, everybody that gets killed, like, the captain and everyone that gets killed over the course of the movie, in the theatrical version, you never find out what happened to them or where they went. In the director's cut, you do. There is one rather brief scene where you see where the bodies have gone, and Ripley destroying them. Also, the other scene that was added, which I fucking love, was actually the first glimpse of the alien. But the way it was done was so awesome. It's when Brett is going looking for Jones, the cat. And he goes into that big warehousey type of thing, and then he kind of looks up and lets the water drip on his face, and you see the alien hanging from the but he doesn't
notice it.
He doesn't notice it, and it doesn't it's not a big deal. They're not da 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 or anything. They're just showing it, and actually you're not really sure because there's chains and it's dark, and it's wait, is that the alien hanging up there? You're not even sure. And I kind of love that they introduced it that way in the theatrical cut. So I actually really like, because then later on you see he turns around and he sees his face, it's whoa, what I mean? But
and I really liked the scene where it shows you what happened to the missing crew.
Yeah, I like that as well.
They were kind of being digested and transformed into these eggs. The same kind of egg that
they're being cocooned as hosts.
Right. Well, they're turned into eggs that have the face hugger in it.
Yeah.
Now, some purists or some fans of this movie might say, "Hey, hold on, only a queen can lay eggs." But actually, there's a lot of precedence in nature to where something like a drone can turn into a queen through other means. So I thought that was a good idea to include that. I think it should have been kind of like that from the beginning, and then they introduced the queen alien later on. That would have worked too.
Yeah.
But no, I could kind of see, there might be a circumstance where there's only one drone alien and it has to reproduce. There's no queens around, so it has, a way to kind of become a false queen or to make eggs. And it makes an egg, and out of that egg comes a queen, or it comes, might be something like that.
Well, that could happen because some insects
that happens in the insect world.
Have that kind of life cycle, so that's not crazy.
So but some fans I think get mad. Oh no, that alien can't do that. Like they're going to dictate what the xenomorph can do.
Which I kind of wish like Ridley Scott or Dan O'Bannon would just call these people up specifically and go, "Don't tell me what my fucking alien can and can't do. Right, it's my fucking alien." God.
Life finds a way. Even
as Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park.
Even snakes can sometimes change sex if
some fish can do that.
If there aren't enough, if there's too much of a sexual imbalance, they can become another gender, so the species can continue.
Yeah,
and so it makes sense that maybe something kind of like an ant or a highly evolved bee and an alien ant or an alien bee or whatever you might want to call this thing. However you want to look at it, it might have the ability to produce a queen by transforming a person into an egg. An egg that has a queen in it or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was cool.
Now, let's talk a little bit about, I was going to say, now, when the first Alien came out in 1979, it was mostly positively reviewed. It was actually nominated for a bunch of awards, a bunch of Saturn Awards, BAFTA Awards. It was actually nominated for an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects or something like that. Some critics didn't like it, but then kind of reassessed later on because it's obvious it was a classic. If I had to pick, I actually like Alien a little bit better than Aliens, just because it's more a straight up horror movie. I like the darkness. I like the suspensefulness. I like the relatability of the characters. I like the regular Joe type characters just kind of doing their job and then getting fucked up by one alien. But then came Aliens, 1986. Now, this was actually not directed by Ridley Scott, obviously. It was directed by James Cameron.
Yeah.
And I don't believe he was the first choice, but after the executives read his script for The Terminator, and they thought he would be a good one to do this, because initially they were planning to do an Alien sequel not that long after the first one. But then, there was some stuff with the studio. It's like, well, it didn't really make enough money to warrant a sequel and blah, blah, blah. But eventually, they got around to making one in 1986. Now, Aliens was actually much more like... It still had some horror elements, but I would call it a sci-fi action movie.
Yeah,
more than anything else.
I saw this one new in the theater when it came out. I can remember being in a video arcade in a mall called Aladdin's Castle, and I had the ticket to Aliens. All right, waiting for showtime to go in there and see it.
Yeah,
I think I was playing Arkanov or it was Solovov, some video game that we had, and I was just dying to see this movie, and it scared me so much. When I saw Alien 1 with my dad, afterwards, I get back in the truck and he's driving, and I'm being kind of quiet, and he goes, "Scared you, didn't I?" I says, "Yeah." And he goes, "You want to see it again?" I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, we'll see it again. We'll see it again next week." And so Alien 1 had made a big impression on me. So waiting to see Alien 2, I was just like on pins and needles. And the sensation I had at that time, in what'd you say it was? 80 what?
86.
86, yeah. When this story starts unfolding, and I'm finding out that all of those eggs got exposed, and that there's got to be hundreds of those things out there, I was fucking terrified.
Yeah, like one's bad enough. In the first movie, she had to blow up the whole fucking ship just to get rid of that one motherfucking alien, and now they're everywhere.
Right, because, the alien to me was kind of like Jason. Imagine one Jason's bad enough. You got thousands of them now.
Little Jason clones running around.
So I really wasn't aware that I wasn't aware at the time watching the movie that it was an action movie. Even though action was unfolding, I didn't really see it as an action movie. I just saw it as a horror movie with a bunch of horrible monsters and these Marines fighting them.
Yeah.
It wasn't until after, you know what I mean, you start cooling off, you go, yeah, that was an action movie, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because
I get what you're saying, though.
It seemed more like just an over-the-top horror movie at the time. Didn't seem
pretty
like
terrifying.
Yeah. Because I'm putting myself in the positions of these people, you know. Yeah, I got guns now. I'm going to get you. You know, fight them. You know, that kind of stuff. Because before they didn't really have any effective weapons.
Well, yeah, because they weren't expecting.
Right.
I mean, they were just on their way back to Earth. You know?
Right.
They just got rerouted without any of their own. I mean, they didn't do it.
You said you liked Alien 1 first better than Alien 2. I lived it as they came out and saw them in the theaters. At the time, I would say Alien 2 blew Alien 1 away.
A lot of people say that it's like the sequel that, you know, that is way better than the original, which doesn't usually happen.
I wouldn't say it was way better in that way, though.
Yeah.
What it was is they couldn't redo Alien 1.
Yeah, and he didn't want to, James Cameron. He wanted to approach it from a different perspective.
That was done already.
Yeah.
You couldn't have another horror movie with one alien in it running around killing people. That wouldn't work anymore, you know? You had to up the ante. We had to know more about the aliens, where they come from. You had to know more. And Alien 2 delivered.
Yeah.
It actually delivered. It was one of the first times I go into a movie. Hollywood was rocking at this time. I mean, they knew how to handle a franchise at this particular time, you know. They didn't do too well with 3, but you know, I know the history of the movie. They did the best as they could. I respect 3, but it didn't top 2. 2 was just rolling. I mean, it was awesome. Really good. And in other franchises, you know, what was going on was, you know, Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
And then later on, T2 came. So, in those days, sequels sometimes could be as good or better than the original.
Yeah. It does happen every now and again.
It wasn't
but
a sustainable model. Hollywood started to fuck up after that, if you ask me.
Well, and the thing is, once you get into, I mean, even a premise as seemingly wide-ranging as Aliens, it's like you're going to get into some repetitiveness and you know, things of that nature. It's just it's just the nature of the beast. But honestly, when Aliens came out, I mean, it was immediately like the critics were just like orgasmic in how fucking wonderful this movie was, and it was nominated for pretty much all the awards. It was nominated for tons and tons of Academy Awards. Interestingly, and I didn't know this until I just read it on the Wikipedia page, Sigourney Weaver was nominated for Best Actress for this movie. It was her first nomination. She didn't win, but it was actually, that's a really big deal because it was 1986. Right. I mean, sci-fi and horror was still kind of a iffy genre.
I got to mention something, though, all right? And this is from personal experience. Alien 2, the success of Alien 2 really was predicated on whether or not you had seen Alien 1.
Yeah.
Because I came out of seeing Alien 2, and I was blown away, and saw a girl that I knew waiting to go in and see it. And she goes, was it any good? I said, shit was scary, man. She said, it was? I said, yeah. Well, later on I saw her again. She goes, that shit wasn't scary. And I said, did you see Alien 1? She goes, no. So, if you didn't see Aliens didn't scare you that much because you didn't go through the experience of being terrified by just one of them.
Right.
So you didn't have the backstory.
Yeah.
There was something about you were terrified by one of them, and then all of a sudden there were thousands of them.
And you were seeing them fighting against a group of people that were prepared.
Right.
You know? I mean, even though the whole premise of the movie, and one thing that I do love about Aliens is the development of Ripley's character, as she's kind of like given a lot more depth. I mean, she has a lot of depth in the first movie too, but her character is just really expanded out, like especially through her relationship with the Marines and her relationship with Newt, the little girl that they find. Yeah. And it's just this really, really cool like expansion of her character. And like I said, she was nominated for Best Actress that year. But you know, here's a thing where the beginning of the movie is her trying to tell them about this alien, then she ended up having to blow up the Nostromo, the ship.
Yeah, and they didn't believe her.
And they didn't believe her.
Right.
Which, you know.
I remember when I was first seeing that for the first time, I'm like, whoa, they don't believe her? Oh, man, what assholes.
Yeah.
And then I was still young, and I was going like, yeah, maybe they wouldn't believe you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they wouldn't.
You know, when you're optimistic when you're a kid, you think, yeah, we been his ass. I survived. And then you tell the company, hey, it's over here. It wouldn't even cross your mind that they wouldn't believe you.
Yeah. It probably crossed her mind, but she got very, very upset, and I don't blame her. Yeah. But then later, they come crying back to her. They're like, well, the colony that we sent there over the ensuing 57 years that she was in cryosleep, they haven't been responding, so maybe there's something to that alien thing that you've been telling us about. So why don't you just go back up there and check that out? Yeah. But at least they did send all the Marines up there with it. But here's the thing, though. They sent all the Marines up there, ostensibly, and
all 8 of them?
Her going, she even said to Paul Reiser's character, who was the shitheel of this movie, she's like, I will go if you promise that we are going to wipe these aliens out. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, sure, we're totally going to do that.
Yeah, you know
how that shit was going to go. You know how the whole Weyland-Yutani Corporation thing goes. We're just like, we just want to go, we're going to wipe them out for sure. No, really, we want to.
Yeah, and they only sent one squad or one platoon, which is about 8-9 guys.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, and the lieutenant that was leading them was brand new. It was only his second combat mission, so a real high priority mission, they send just, one platoon or a squad, whatever they want to call it. I kind of feel like and then a green, it was a setup.
It had to be. And like I said, and I think we mentioned this too in our Prometheus review, it's like, because so many people complained, why were all the scientists idiots and all this other kind of stuff.
Because it was a setup.
Yeah, and I think the same thing was happening. They don't say it, but I think it's implied that even though, they sent these kind of badass, space Marines and everything up there, ostensibly to check out what had happened, there weren't that many of them.
And they also sent everybody who knew about this alien. Anyone who survived and knew about them, they all sent them there.
I kind of feel like even from the beginning, their whole thing... Yeah, and why were they so keen to make Ripley go along with them, even though she had been traumatized from her first
They're trying to kill all witnesses.
Yeah, they're just trying to kill them all off and bring back the fucking aliens so they can use them as weapons and shit like that. So I think that was kind of their plan from the beginning, and that's why they sent that fucking Paul Reiser douche along there to kind of facilitate that.
And people were going on about how awesome the Space Marines were. I'm ex-infantry. And I'm telling you, those guys were shitty soldiers, most of them. That's why they got their asses kicked.
Well, they had
They did a lot of shit that was wrong that you wouldn't have done.
James Cameron was saying that he liked the whole thing where he's like, you had these Marines and they were like super cocky and they're like,
their asses
we're going to kick all this out. We have all this firepower and come on, bring it, blah, blah, blah. And then they were like, oh shit. And then they all got their asses kicked. He's like, so he kind of liked that juxtaposition.
Yeah, and the corporal was the only one that had the right idea. He heard Ripley say, well, nuke the site from orbit. Nuke the site from orbit.
Yeah.
That was the same as, why don't you freeze him?
Yeah.
Well,
like I said, that was like the cool thing about his character.
It's always the underdog that figures it out.
Well, and it seems like, too, that the whole arc of Ripley's character, at least through the first 2 movies, was almost just kind of like a struggle to get her fucking voice heard, even though she's the only one that's right in all of these fucking movies. And it's like pulling teeth to get some dude to agree with her.
Well, it's because...
and say, would you please listen to her?
That's because the other guys, the guys had ulterior motives.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want to bring the thing back alive. Or, they're following company orders that say bring the thing back alive, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's all kind of sketchy shit going on in this one.
Yeah, the right answer wasn't the answer they wanted to hear.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I feel like, and like I said, I think Sigourney Weaver is amazing in this, and Ripley is really one of the most iconic horror sci-fi action movie characters ever. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. But I mean, like I said, I love both of these movies. I love Aliens, but I'm going to give the edge to Alien, even though they're really not the same kind of movie. I mean, obviously, they're 2 different directors. James Cameron did a phenomenal job. It's an amazing movie. It just, keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time. But because I'm more a horror person, I tend to... if I'm going to rewatch one, I'll probably rewatch the first one. Just because it's so creepy. He doesn't show the alien much. It's just kind of in the shadows all the time. And it's super spooky. It's almost like a haunted house type of movie. Yeah. And, I just prefer that type of thing. Right. But like I said, the second one is also a masterpiece. And I'm not going to fight anybody over that.
And Alien 3 is not a bad movie.
No, it's not.
The quality is good. The tone of the movie is good. The problem with the movies is kind of pointless. They kill off 2 characters from Alien 2 that they didn't have to kill off.
Yeah.
Actually 3, wasn't it? Because it was the robot, Hicks, and the little girl that killed them before. They're not even there.
Yeah.
They're killed off in a crash. It ends up on a prison planet, and really the way that movie ends, it makes the whole thing kind of pointless. Like, so what? And then Alien 4 is kind of a cartoonish movie. Not horrible, but I would say not artistically great, really. Not deep either.
Well, especially when the first two are that good.
Yeah.
I mean, anything you do is going to seem like a pale.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm going to get a lot of hate for it, but Prometheus and Covenant fall more closely in line with 1 and 2 than 3 and 4.
Well, and I liked Prometheus and Alien Covenant a lot better than Alien.
Yeah, and I think there's some generational differences. It seems like some really young people really hate Prometheus. They really hate Covenant, and I think just because there's different audience expectations nowadays, I think.
Yeah,
what they expect a movie to be, I think, is not exactly what people of our generation expected. They want everything answered for them very easily, and they want things to lay out real perfectly with any kind of expanded universe literature that they've been reading, and it all has to fit in and interlock. And if it doesn't fit in with their video games that they've been watching and the fan fiction that they've been reading, then they reject it. Which, it's a problem with fandom, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, that might have been like that the whole time, but you just hear about it more.
Well, they say, Prometheus doesn't make sense. And they go, well, yeah, it does make sense. It's just not making the sense that you want to make. Yeah, all the crew was incompetent, but they were incompetent on purpose. The companies, the company sent them there to fail, that kind of stuff. It was actually the replicant that did it. What was her name? The blonde hair, Miss Vickers.
Yeah,
Miss Vickers. Yeah, Miss Vickers is a replicant, and you find that out if you buy the Blu-ray and look at the expanded material on there. There's a bunch of little things. It's trying to tie in with the new Blade Runner movie too.
But I have to say that even after all this time, I mean, the first Alien, which was made in 1979, for fuck's sake, it still looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks good.
The inside of the spaceship, there's big buttons and stuff like that, but it's not as egregious as some of... It has that same used future kind of look that Star Wars has, which actually makes it kind of ageless.
Yeah.
Because it looks like just old ramshackle kind of... This is our old towing spaceship, and it's kind of shitty looking.
I'd probably put it up there with 2001.
Yeah. And it was definitely inspired by that also.
Just like a blue-collar version of 2001.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Right. And obviously the creature design, like I said, that has not been topped in all the years since. That is just an amazing, amazing monster. And, that's all Giger right there. That's just, that whole
some might say
shit.
Some might say that the Predator was also a good design. There were a lot of good designs.
Yeah.
It's just that was a badass. That was the first believable monster I'd seen in a movie.
Yeah.
Now, haven't lived through all this yet when all the stuff was new. That one scared me, but I think The Thing scared me more.
Yeah.
The whole idea that thing could get into you and absorb you and make a copy of you and replicate itself that way, and if it got out and then made it back to civilization, could swallow up the Earth, or swallow up the Earth's population in about 3 or 4 years. I think that's what the computer said. That blew my mind too. I really liked The Thing. And also the 2009 Thing wasn't bad either. I think it was 2009.
I actually quite liked it.
Yeah, the prequel.
I know some people didn't like it, but I actually kind of liked it. But the thing, the thing about The Thing is that it's kind of hard to make anything scarier than this person that and you think is your best friend or your wife or your husband or whatever is an alien and you can't tell. That's why Invasion of the Body Snatchers is scary, because it's the same premise.
And it's weird because it's like an alien colony, and it can make any kind of appendage it needs. It can become a spider. Right. It can fall apart into a bunch of pieces. Its blood can run away. But it can turn into a big beast. It does whatever it wants.
As far as straight up monster movies go, it's hard to get scarier than Alien, because that is a fucking frightening looking. And actually, interestingly enough, the first Alien, 1979, the guy inside that suit was a dude that they just found at a bar, this Nigerian guy. And he was 6'10".
Yeah.
And he was really, really skinny, and he had these really, really long arms. And they wanted that guy for the suit because they were like, we want it to look like... He's like, obviously, we want it to be a suit. We want it to be a practical effect. But we want it to look like there's no way that there could be a human in there. Yeah. So they actually did find a good... I mean, sometimes it's stunt people and stuff, but he was generally the...
There's a deleted scene where he creeps in and starts messing around and kind of flirting with one of the women before he kills them. It's on that DVD. They didn't put it in there, but it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
The way he was sitting there on the ground and unfolding and stuff. It's weird.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be kind of, like a rape monster.
Yeah, that's
he's a rape monster.
Well, that's what it was. This was like a rapist monster.
Yeah, and originally
had all the ovipositors and all that kind of shit.
Originally, he was going to be real interested in girls. That's kind of cool. Kind of weird when you think about it.
It is pretty weird, yeah.
Yeah.
But okay. So, anything else you want to add?
Nah.
And like I said,
this is the movies that you need. If you haven't seen this, then there's something wrong with you.
I really don't know.
Can't help you.
And there's actually a lot of movies in that line, but Alien and Aliens. I mean. If you haven't seen that, I don't know. If you haven't
seen these, then there's something wrong with you.
Like, how do you live? You're not living correctly. Just go see it.
If you haven't seen The Thing.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
I mean,
both of them actually are good.
And we have the Blu-rays of both of these. Like I said, we have the whole set. Aliens has an extended cut and the theatrical cut. Yeah. Actually, on Aliens, I think I prefer the theatrical cut just because it seems like the pacing is a little bit better. The director's cut is quite long. It's like 2.5 hours, isn't it? 2 hours
there's
24 minutes,
extra stuff of Hudson that kind of diminished his character, I think. He's a little too goofy in the extended cut. In the theatrical cut, you can take him a little more seriously. Yeah.
That's so, But, for the first Alien, I actually prefer the director's cut. It's not a huge difference. There's just like a couple brief scenes that have been added back in. And I actually think they enhance the movie quite a bit. So... But that's going to be up to people's opinion. I'm not going to get all thing. But I guess that will wrap it up for our discussion of Alien and Aliens.
See you guys around.
See you guys around. And also, remember, if you like the show, to like, share, subscribe on all your social media. If you'd like to financially support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast, or you can go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account if you'd like to give a one-time donation. Also, be sure to check out our Zazzle store at zazzle.com/13o'clock, where we have t-shirts and a tote bag if you'd like to purchase one. Also, remember that our regular episodes go up every Tuesday, and our movie reviews go up every Friday. We will see you next time. Bye.